This is just for personal trainers too, or anyone that needs help with understanding the truth behind the hip thrust. I'm just repeating everything that he is saying.
When I say back extensions, really they should probably be called hip extensions.
He's saying that
when I say back extensions, really they should probably be called hip extensions.
What is the hip thrust supposedly? Hip extension.
When I say back extensions, really they should probably be called hip extensions.
What's the problem? Is there an issue? So we're told that there's only two ways to do the hip thrust. Hinge and then the scoop. The hinge is supposed to be a neutral spine position one, and then the scoop is supposed to be scooping with the pelvis moving. When you open the book, there's at least 7 options of spinal pelvic strategies, but then when you look at the neutral spine position ones, they're not in an actual neutral spine position. Then to get more information, I started going online and watching videos.
A lot of coaches in a hip thrust say that you should try to stay neutral, okay? This would be staying neutral. If you stay in neutral, you always end up arching a little bit. You end up going into some extension like this. And this is confirmed by EMG, which shows that you're getting a similar amount of erector activity during hip thrusts as deadlifts when you stay in neutral. So you're getting high compressive forces with that extension, which is problematic. When you have high compressive forces and extension, you're more likely to damage these posterior elements of the spine, like the facet joints, for example. So you're more likely to cause injury and pain when you have high compressive forces and extension.
The papers that I referenced, one was, are all hip extensions created equal? And I was even laughing at one point because they're telling us the truth right in front of our face. You have hip extension in the title, but then they're picking 3 lower back exercises. The 45-degree back extension and the horizontal back extension, and then the good morning. So then I keep going through the paper. They've never measured the lower body, but your glutes are a part of your lower body. Here's the easiest way I could put it. Hip extension is when your leg moves behind you without moving your upper body and without moving your pelvis at the same time. So that paper, they admitted that they didn't measure the hip joint, they didn't measure any lower body mechanics, they didn't use any force plates, and they didn't use any 3D modeling. They took the measurements, the moment arm from the trunk, top of the head to the hip joint, but the hip joint was closed off because the bench was on top of the pelvis. So now the form is inaccurate. The other moment arm was from the external resistance, which was the plate or the weight or the dumbbell. So they took those 2 moment arms from the upper body, calculated it, they add them together, and then they say, okay, that's the hip extension torque, when they never measured the lower body, like the legs at all. But that's what everyone else does in the scientific world. They do it the correct way. But then they even tell us at the end how to precisely calculate and find true hip extension torque, which is through 3D motion capture, through force plates, and inverse dynamics. So then I knew of this paper that did all that with the back extension 45 degree. And this paper was actually great because they separated back extension, hip extension, and they separated the hip extension from back extension as much as they can, but they concluded accurately the torque to the hip because they use ground reaction forces and they use force plates. So then if you compare those numbers to the paper from 2013, here's a graph that showcases the quote-unquote hip extension torque on the left-hand side by Contreras 2013, and then on the right-hand side, it is the back extension torque by Schellenberg 2017, and they are almost identical. And then in the green, it is Schellenberg's 2017 true hip extension torque. There's no point of me saying it's obvious because they've already admitted it every single time, so yeah. Because they're even saying that they're warning us that the numbers are going to be off in real life. And they didn't measure the spine, the ankle, or the knees. So they've admitted in the paper that they measured the trunk torque. They're saying it, and I'm just repeating it. What's the problem? Whoever's emotions are getting...
You need to leave! That is disgusting.
Find Jesus, find God. So now these 3 papers that talk about the glute bridge are done by actual scientists that are actual doctors as well that still treat patients. And he went crazy in depth. Each one of the papers introduced the hip bridge as a lumbar and pelvic exercise to strengthen the lower back muscles with volume. And this thug right here, Dr. Paul C. Williams, invented the posterior pelvic tilt in a bridge position to help people with chronic lower back pain. And like, look at him. He knows the generation after is going to fuck it up. That's why he has his arms crossed like that. And he's like grinning like, yo, y'all going to fuck my shit up. Because it was only prescribed by doctors. And it was for sure never meant to be a universal cue to the general public, because if someone has a kyphotic lower back, look up the term, more than likely you shouldn't be doing a posterior pelvic tilt or even a butt squeeze. Butt squeezing mechanics, no way. So yeah, posterior pelvic tilt, once a clinical prescription, now just a symptom of bad fucking coaching.